Welcome, everyone. I am Tim Wade, your host, and this is the Safety Wire podcast. It's a common phrase in safety that we need 100% buy-in for the program to work properly. I fully agree with that. However, there's one group that is by design responsible for promotion, support, and oversight of a well-run safety program, and that is the leadership that is involved in safety. Which brings me to my guest. Joining me today is someone I have had the pleasure of working alongside multiple times in the past. He is currently serving as president and CEO of the Akron Canton Airport. Mr. Ren Camacho, it is great to have you on, sir.
Good morning, Tim. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. So I want to do this in kind of two parts. I want to get to know you and the professional you are, and then dig into safety and how that influences your daily operation at Akron Canton. So could you walk me through, how did you get into aviation? What led up to where you are today?
Sure. No, thanks for the question. So aviation's in my blood. My dad was a city bus driver. I grew up in New York City. He drove buses there for many years. So I'd hop on the bus with him and ride along. And, just from a very early age, watching planes land and take off from LaGuardia, kind of his turnaround stop, if you will, was on the facing the East River. And we would watch planes take off and land out of LaGuardia. So maybe in an indirect way that got me into aviation, but at least transportation with the buses. Fast forward to my career and getting into aviation, it really started with my background as a civil engineer. I studied at RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic, got my bachelor's there, and then my master's at NYU Poly a couple of years after that. And then right after, started my career with the New York Port Authority and worked there for 14 years, 1993 through 2007. And obviously one of the biggest events in that tenure was 9/11. So that event there, I look at the number of days that have existed since 9/11, which is, I think today, 7,826 days have gone by since 9/11. And I hold those sorts of numbers as each day passes because I should have been at the World Trade Center that day. I had friends and colleagues who didn't make it. I had friends and colleagues who were there and made it out that day. You just didn't know where the plane hit. With respect to our floor, we had a chance to, or those employees, I should say, had a chance to evacuate, but you just didn't know if you were there that day to be called back in to help. And some people did that, did not survive the aftermath. So tragic event, but that also really propelled my wanting to make aviation safer. So wanting to look at aviation as this. If you know the New York Port Authority, they operate and manage bridges, tunnels, the World Trade Center, obviously, pre and post 9/11, port facilities, and of course the airports. And out of all of those facilities, which I've had the pleasure and distinct pleasure of working for all those facilities in one way, shape, or form, I've had the opportunity to work at airports, primarily at JFK. So that sort of solidified my tenure and my career path, I should say, as far as aviation. So 9/11, my background as a civil engineer, my adolescence and growing up with a transportation-related dad and that sort of thing really got me into this career. And then, of course, coming to Cleveland, I moved to Northeast Ohio in 2007 and started as a design engineer, worked my way up to basically be the capital construction vice president, for lack of a better term, the chief of planning and engineering at Cleveland Hopkins. And then 5 years ago, about 4.5 years ago, I should state that I got the position here at CAK. So super happy to be here. Great team, and we have some exciting things in store.
What an incredible story. My goodness. I think everyone has a "where were you on 9/11" story. I know for me, I'm younger, so mine was sitting in 7th grade home ec. But being in the aviation industry, I have heard so many incredible stories of how that influenced them, how that pushed them. But for you to be right in the epicenter of it, that is incredible. So it doesn't get said enough. But as a veteran, I hear often, thank you for your service. But for you to be with the Port Authority right at ground zero, thank you for what you had to go through. So I think that could be a whole conversation in itself, is discussing your stories from New York City and all you saw with the PAPD. So that's incredible. So currently, you're serving as president and CEO, which to me that's a pretty intimidating title. And when you think of a normal business, but when you look at the integral parts of an airport, I think you and I discussed it's almost like you're a mayor. For instance, it's a small city that you're operating with a major transportation piece, but a small city nonetheless. So your reach and leadership is needed in multiple directions. What do you think prepared you for your current role today?
So, Tim, obviously that what I described regarding 9/11 really solidified my wanting, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and my mindset and my passion for aviation.
Mm-hmm.
So, seeing what happened up close and obviously looking at the aftermath and where I wanted to focus my career path, that was, that's one of those major issues, major, pathways, if you will, that propelled me into my career. And as far as the leadership and the city within a city concept, to your point, the mayor of a city, right? We have everything a city would have if you think about it, from infrastructure to, legal to environmental to all the other areas that a city may have. We have it within an airport environment. Growing up in New York City, spending time in Cleveland, really getting through for Cleveland. Their Olympics was the Republican National Convention coming through back in
Mm-hmm.
2016, at least during my tenure there, and seeing that event come through and successfully. We had some projects we had to get complete. That really, again, elevated my passion for the profession, for aviation, and wanting to further, again, the safety and day-to-day upkeep of what it takes to run a community asset like an airport. My background as a civil engineer, right? So looking at all the infrastructure, whether it's the terminal environment, the runway environment, the land side where people get dropped off, signage, how important signage and wayfinding is to the experience of a passenger, whether they're a millennial or whether they're a baby boomer, how important that is to folks. And then just to touch upon when I first started here at the end of 2018, my predecessor, Rick McQueen, really had the foresight of introducing me to a lot of those key stakeholders in the region, from our employees, of course, some of our key tenants, but also those relationships that we forged with the local chambers, the tourism bureaus, other economic development groups that really set the stage, set the tone, if you will, for my eventual stint here as the CEO, and being able to again forge those relationships and ensure that the airport is on a great path moving forward. We were just on the back end of a capital improvement program, a 10-year program, which culminated in the new terminal gate improvements
Mm-hmm.
that you may have heard or read about, where we added 4 new gates on the second level, all modernized gates now, all jet bridged gates, if you will. No longer do you have to be exposed to the elements. So it's just those little things, and still keeping that convenience of the parking lots, the car rental, all of those, the modern amenities to the airports, right up close, right up front, for the passenger to experience, within minutes, is all that is what we're about and what we will continue to be
Mm-hmm.
about.
That's incredible. It's a lot of people look at the direction of an airport to getting planes back up in the sky, but so much of it is focused around the customer experience. Once the plane takes off, the customer's gone, but they spend a few hours on the front end and the back end there for every single flight. So it's great how focused you are on that. So things are booming for you guys these days. Your social media team is on fire, by the way. And what I've noticed is it seems like you guys have truly bounced back from COVID. It seems like a new destination or flight is announced almost every week, it seems. How are things going for the airport currently, and what's your horizon looking like?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We get asked that question a lot. We're a regional airport. We know our place, right, in Northeast Ohio, with Cleveland up to the north, and then you have Pittsburgh and Columbus airports, not within a couple hours driving distance. So we know our place as the regional airport, our premise for domestic commercial air service. And of course, we have GA, and we have some of those other corporate operations
Mm-hmm.
as well. Knowing our stance, knowing our position, we wanted to make sure that, we're set in a position to succeed. And the gate modernization project really right sizes us for that
Mm-hmm.
future success. We have a total of 9 gates with the ability to expand quickly to 11. So if a new airline or an incumbent airline wanted to expand service or introduce new service, we're prepared to do just that. With traffic just in general, traffic has picked up since COVID. During COVID, it was pretty interesting. I chuckle only because we were in the throes of a major upheaval in our industry, not just CAK, but industry
Hmm.
wide. I'm sure you're aware with your work as well. And there were days where we had more flight crews going through the checkpoints than passengers. We went from 11 nonstops to 4, and that happened almost overnight, practically overnight. So we just had to adjust quickly. We knew the type of traveler coming through was more of a leisure-based traveler. There was very little to no business travel, and that's sort of trickling its way back, at least for CAK. I know some of the other parts of the country are seeing more rapid growth as far as business travel goes. And just making sure that we maintain the dialogue with our airline partners, making sure that we continue to reach out to them, whether it's through our great marketing team, our air service development team, so that we ensure that we continue to establish and reestablish air service as a priority, and making sure that that airport travel experience continues to be seamless. So we think the horizon is definitely positive. There's more air service announcements that are coming. I'm
Hmm.
tight-lipped and that sort of thing. I can't speak about that. And then ultimately, we really need business travel to come back. The projections are early 2024. That's the sort of time frame, the crystal ball, at least industry
Hmm.
experts have been mentioning, and it might be 25. But if we get it even sooner than early 2024, we'd be ecstatic, because that's really the segment of the population we're missing, to get those guys in jackets and jeans coming through the airports to get on planes and go somewhere. And we're at 16 nonstops now, looking to grow. Just while this podcast is being recorded, we just had one more announcement. Breeze Airways announcing Norfolk, so I can make that public. So CAK to Norfolk is
Outstanding.
starting pretty soon here, and probably in the summer months, and that'll likely last through the rest of the year, and depending on demand, may go into 2024. So we're super excited about those sorts of opportunities.
Well, you heard it here first. If you have some Virginia Beach travel coming up, or your son or daughter's graduating from Fort Eustis, like I did, that's a great destination for you guys. You had mentioned how much it slowed down during COVID, and it didn't hit me how the industry was doing till probably late March, early April, when I work out of Hopkins, and I drove around Perimeter Road, and it was just packed with parked airplanes everywhere, as far as the eye could see, tail to tail. And that's when I knew, okay, this is pretty serious. We're starting to park all these jets. So I'm glad everyone seems to be rebounding. I know business travel is. I'm starting to travel a lot more for my position as well. So I hope that picks up for you guys. Let's dig down into safety here. I asked this question of all my guests. Because everyone has a different story and perspective, and you obviously have an incredible history, especially with your stories coming from 9/11 in New York as well. How have you seen the safety culture of aviation change during your time in this industry? And if I could broaden that out just a little bit more, I normally wouldn't. I usually stick this with safety, but I want to broaden this out into security as well. Given your position, your history, how have you seen aviation safety and security evolve over the years?
Yeah, for me, Tim, it's definitely evolved with that very focus, more on safety, more on security. The TSA, for example, there's a lot more that they talk about with the insider threat issue.
Hmm.
There's actually some legislation, some proposed legislation that's out there now with respect to TSA, or Department of Homeland Security, I guess, is a better organization to use, that would basically have provide or ensure that those employees, airport employees, are screened that much more attentively, for lack of a better term, and
Hmm.
basically all the entry and exit portals into the secure area of the airport are in essence solidified from that perspective. So that's coming. You have your typical, Part 139 requirements for the airport, right? The runway environment. We have that annual certification, that certification officer that comes out from the regional office, and they continue to
Hmm.
work with us there. That not much has changed there. There's a little bit more emphasis on training records and that sort of thing that we've noticed over the last few years. So we've definitely been harping our guys, and they do a great job. We've had no records or findings, if you will, and they do a fantastic job of their record keeping. But we've just noticed that little extra dotting of the I, crossing of the T, that the
Hmm.
certification officer will pinpoint maybe a section of pavement that maybe in years past they would, because it's not a highly traveled location, they may have kind of glossed over, but now they're actually pointing and saying, yeah, you need to address that as part of your AIP, or perhaps the bipartisan infrastructure law, the bill legislation that was passed. And speaking of bill, we had the $20 billion that was passed for airports, which is a nice down payment, I like to say, and I think and industry organizations will say the same thing. And it's a nice win for the airports. It is a down payment because you talk to, or not talk to, but you hear from the industry experts, the organizations like AAA and ACI, that airports across the nation need about 115 billion with the B as in boy or Bravo, airport term, 115 billion dollars over the next 5 years just with infrastructure needs alone. And that's not necessarily addressing tower relocations and those sorts of things, which we're right now looking at as well. We'll probably have one of the oldest, if not the oldest, air traffic control tower in the country. So that's a need for us as well. So looking at what that really means, there's been a huge focus from the FAA on runway incursion mitigations, a lot of focus on runways and taxiway intersections and making sure those alignments are more than 90 degrees, that a pilot needs to make at least 2 turns before entering the runway environment. And we have 2 hotspot projects we're working on now to address safety concerns, not that they've been issues, but just concerns, potential concerns down the road with respect to airfield geometry. And some of our pavements are within ILS areas, if you will. So, for example, those are some of the things that we're addressing. So we see that from the TSA, as I talked about, with beyond their traditional screening requirements, making sure that guns and drugs through checkpoints, and again, not too big of an issue here, hardly at all. But the insider threat, I think, is something that we've been seeing more and more. And then lastly, I would say on the environmental side, Tim, there's been a huge emphasis on construction projects. Any construction projects over an acre that you disturb, you basically have to notify the Ohio EPA for that. They check, obviously, the stormwater pollution prevention. There's a plan you have to put in place that ties into water quality. They've also been paying closer attention to proper fueling of tankers that fuel the airplanes. Obviously, OSHA is a big concern with PPE going into confined spaces, that sort of thing. Noise and air quality comes into mind as well. And then this whole forever chemical PFAS issue. And I know the FAA is looking at alternates to that forever chemical for firefighting needs. So those are some of those high level kind of overarching TSA, FAA, environmental that we're seeing, at least I'm seeing in my position here.
If only the common traveler knew all the inner workings of where that little dollar fee and the $1.50 actually goes to. I mean, there's a massive infrastructure supporting it. And you touched on a lot of things that I see working throughout the industry. With MBAA, we work with runway incursion programs all the time. I know NATA is doing great initiatives with a legal charter. And to see the initiatives you guys are taking really shows this is truly one of those industries where we can see the risks throughout the industry as a whole, not just at Akron Canton. You guys are not, you don't have blinders on here. We all look at the industry as a whole, and we look at the risks other people are facing and how we can start to drill that down and make improvements for our own areas.
If I may, Tim, you talking about risk, right, and safety, and what we've seen that's been different. So obviously we've just gone through, at least are continuing on the back end, we hope, if not its finality of a pandemic, and what we've had to do to really react and pivot to adjust to an environment that remained open, by the way, during COVID, during the pandemic, allowing our construction, our gate modernization to continue. But while that was happening, all of those construction workers, all of our employees, all of our tenants, the administrative staff, myself included, had to adjust to wearing masks every day, socially distance, the Purell sanitizers everywhere, providing what we call nanoseptic devices. So if your hands or fingers touch escalator railings or elevator buttons, it's basically self-cleansing. So those are things that we've implemented, and we've submitted those actually to ACINA, Airports Council International, and received a health accreditation award. And we were the first in the state of Ohio to receive that recognition. So we're super proud of the custodial and
Wow.
building maintenance teams to get us through COVID. So that's kind of an aside. You kind of had to do that, and we went all in
Hmm.
to make sure that the traveling public, of course, construction workers, employees, tenants, all entered a safe environment and continue to do so.
Hmm. Well, it's one thing to address a risk at the base level, but to take it and continuously improve upon it and be proactive with it, like you guys said, congratulations on that award. Most people probably don't even know that there are awards like that, but for the fact that you guys are striving to improve your organization on that level, that's incredible. I know it was really difficult for a lot of us in aviation, especially those of us in the health and safety field, because we had to look at it from two perspectives. I'm sure you did as well. What was sustainable and best for the business? What's sustainable and best for the employees? And a lot of times it was difficult to separate those two because they come together very well. If we don't sustain the business properly, our employees don't get a paycheck. If we don't sustain our employees and focus on their health properly, then there's no business for them to operate in. So yeah, it was a difficult time to try to be proactive and to make the best judgment calls for health and safety for both the business and the employees. So definitely kudos to you guys for how in tune you guys were with those programs. So with every business and airline that operates at the airport having their own safety programs, can you walk me through how they work together and what does the safety structure of an airport really look like with all those different interactive pieces?
So it starts, Tim, with the safety as a core value. And we actually have our core values on our walls, whether it's our conference rooms, our break rooms, and safety is at the top, along with accountability, integrity, respect, and growth. And growth could be innovation, growth could be personal growth, professional growth. So we have those as core values, and safety is at the very top of that. Obviously, beyond the employee, they're our most prized asset. It's not the pavement out there. It's our employees. They're our most prized asset. So to your point about ensuring that the employee has the tools, the resources they need, whether it's the simple things like PPE or making sure that someone's able to cover a shift for someone else during winter operations and that sort of thing, and they have plenty of sleep, plenty of rest to make that happen. All those little things really add up to ensuring that the employee knows that we, as an organization, care about them because again, they are our most prized asset. Our VPs, our vice presidents, and we have vice presidents in kind of like a city, like I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier, VP of HR, VP of Air Service and Business Development and operations, so on and so forth. So in this case, the VP all get together and conduct safety meetings. And they do that in their independent groups, primarily in the areas of building maintenance, custodial, and field maintenance, which is also operations. So they have weekly talks, and sometimes they become daily conversations, especially this time during the winter, where they need to make sure that the communications and what the goings on of the day are first and foremost. And if there's
Mm-hmm.
coordination with their traffic, there's coordination with the FAA Tech Ops, for example, that those are all happening. If there's an event, an incident, I should say, heaven forbid, an aircraft steers off a runway and we need to address those issues. We make sure that, to your question about the tenants, that they're obviously informed, they're kept in the loop about what's going on. We do have monthly tenant meetings. We also, if we need to inform them either weekly or biweekly, we bring them in as well. Communication, I can't understate or overstate communication. It really needs to be at the top of everyone's mind. And whether it's picking up the phone, texting, just face-to-face meetings, podcasts, just any form of communication that will improve a situation. In the case of an incident, beyond informing our tenants and our employees getting involved, we have mutual aid agreements with local agencies, whether it's the City of Greene, Jackson Township, Summit and Stark County emergency management groups, agencies, the EMAs. They come out. If there is an incident, we set up command centers and that sort of thing. But it really is to keep everyone in the loop. And again, I can't understate or overstate again the aspect of communication. The TSA, I meet quarterly with the TSA here just to kind of go through regulatory and operational issues. We share a lot of information, some SSI, some, just these are things that are happening that might impact the checkpoint sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Community events where they may think they want it to have some involvement, and they're great partners. We hear all the time that passengers going through the checkpoint we have the friendliest TSA staff everywhere of anywhere. So we're super proud of their their interactions and the partnership that we have with them. And then lastly, as far as the tenants go and that interaction, I would just say that we hold biannual RSAT meetings, Runway Safety Action Team meetings. The FAA holds those; they're required to. So everyone comes out to those. Obviously, airport staff, the tenants, airlines, corporate hangar folks as well, just to ensure that they're all listening to potential concerns and considerations, and obviously fielding questions and commentary and input, even more so. Those are the folks using those facilities every day, runways and taxiways. What better way to garner input and get some great recommendations and feedback than from the users? So that's important as well. And that's, again, something that we share with our tenants.
It's incredible how many gears come together to make this operation run smoothly, and it's obvious based on your responses how well Akron Canton is doing under your leadership. It looks like there's an incredible future for this airport, and I'm very happy and honored that you've shared that with me today. So, I cannot thank you enough for being on this podcast, Ren. It has been, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, and I think this is going to be very eye-opening for people who just, have questions and don't understand exactly the integral inner workings of an actual airport. So, Ren, thank you so much for being on the episode today.
No, thank you, Tim. And I'd like to end the podcast, if I may, by
Sure.
Asking the question, who do you think owns the Akron Canton Airport? And I'm going to pause for a second. Well, people can ponder about that. Do you happen to know, Tim, who owns the Akron Canton Airport?
I do know, or correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a city-owned airport. You guys are owned by a board of governors?
Not quite. So
okay.
We report to a board of trustees. Nonetheless, we are a political subdivision of the state of Ohio. So technically speaking, you as a taxpayer own the Akron Canton Airport. So those listeners that reside in the state of Ohio that pay their taxes technically own the airport. So again, the true definition of a community asset couldn't be any more real or prevalent than who we are to the community as your regional airport. So I just wanted to end with that. You as the taxpayer own the Akron Canton Airport. We're here to service you. We ask that you check us out. We're adding new air service. We just announced Norfolk today to and from on Breeze Airways, which, by the way, is a great airline, as are the other carriers here, Allegiant, United, and American. They all do a great job to get us to where we want to go, and we'll continue to grow. So appreciate the time, Tim.
No, I love it. You guys have a great community that you guys are serving. So thank you once again for your insight on that one. It was definitely educational for me. I loved hearing from you. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And that will do it for this episode of the Safety Wire Podcast.